MultiGreen, building attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily real estate through impact investing.
Welcome to the MultiGreen podcast. I'm your host, Randy Norton, and today we have a special guest, Dave Ray. He has a very special background. He has sustainable facilities management. He is a LEED accredited professional in operations and maintenance, as well as new building and construction. He is a champion of green cleaning. Yes, that's right, green cleaning. He is regarded as a leading authority on existing building operations and maintenance, and is also a LEED faculty member and regular featured speaker on the LEED and WELL building standards. Enjoy our conversation. Dave, thanks for being with us today on the MultiGreen podcast. Of all people, you would know this question. Why does sustainability matter?
You know, it's always an interesting question because ever since the United Nations came out with a definition of sustainability, I think that everybody's been trying to define sustainability. And, you know, when you look at the true definition of sustainability and what sustainability is, it's a journey to improve. Why does it matter is, well, when you look at the fact that we're living in a world with finite resources, we at some point need to start realizing that we need to do things a little bit different. And instead of kind of the slash and burn mentality that we've had through the age of capitalism and the Industrial Revolution, we need to take a step back and realize that we are on a planet with finite resources. And if we don't change our behavior, we're not going to have the same planet in future generations. So sustainability is mostly important for the future generations to have the same freedoms, enjoyment, and opportunities that our generations and the generations before us had.
Well, that resonates with the MultiGreen team and our investment thesis. We are working with you on all things green. In fact, your company was built on the idea that everyone deserves to live in a healthy and sustainable building. I think that comes right off of your website. So what led you to align with this point of view?
You know, Randy, we've talked about this, and just to kind of give everyone a little bit of an idea, my background is in operations. You know, I had a cleaning company for 20 years, and being in probably one of the most antiquated industries, using some of the most polluting chemicals to provide sanitation for occupants within a building, that's what really got me to kind of look around and say, what am I doing? You know, I grew up on a farm where everything was natural and organic, and we canned all of our extra vegetables so that we could eat them instead of having to buy vegetables at the store later in the winter. You know, we would always go down to the auctions and buy, you know, cows and pigs, and we would fill our freezers. And, you know, being in the cleaning industry where not only were the occupants having to deal with some of these chemicals that were causing reactions and asthma, but the employees were using these chemicals every day to try to provide a clean environment for our clients. And at one point, I think a light just went on, and it was probably in my early days with the USGBC. And I said, you know, why am I doing this, and why don't I do something different? And at that point, Randy, you know, I've told you the story. That's when I started going. Every one of my accounts I converted to green cleaning. You know, we had a $3.5 million annual business, and each one of our clients, for us to invest in green cleaning would take us a month and a half of revenue. And our clients never paid us for it. We did it because it was the right thing. And it was the right thing for the occupants in the building. And most importantly, it was the right thing for the people that were using and spraying these chemicals every day, so that they could actually use chemicals to clean that weren't going to affect their health. And unfortunately, if they were pregnant, their unborn babies. And so after we made that switch, we found that we could do our job better. We found that the employees were happier. And after we made the switch, we actually gave all of our employees a raise because they were doing such a great job that all of a sudden our profits started going up on our accounts because we were doing things differently. We were doing things more dynamically. We were bringing an antiquated cleaning company into the modern age. You know, and after we did that, we started converting our clients into, you know, realizing that they could purchase things differently and they could do different things with their waste streams. So after going through all of those experiences for 20 years and seeing how things can be done the correct way, after I sold the business, you know, my goal was to help other people. On the construction side, it's great. We can help people pick the right materials and do energy efficiencies. But as you and I have spoken, you know, when the rubber hits the road is in the operation side. after the building's done and the contractors and the subcontractors and the punch list is gone, the occupants are in that building. Do they have good air to breathe? Do they have good lighting? Do they have an opportunity to change their lighting? Do they have efficient energy uses and water uses so that their bills aren't astronomical? And that's when I said, I think the most impactful thing that I can do is continue on my career of helping people in the built environment live in a healthier space and do the right thing. And that's when, I met my partner, Rick, and he's an architect doing a lot of sustainability. And we just figured, this is what we are both passionate about. This is what we are both committed to. And we're going to make this business work. We're going to make sure that we educate people, that we give more value to our clients than anybody has ever given before. And the bottom line, we're going to make every one of their projects better. And most importantly, for the owner of those projects, we're going to make them more efficient to operate. And we're going to make sure that they operate them better for the occupants. And that's really where it all started. It started, 2005, when I started looking around and saying, I want to do something different than everybody else in my industry. And I still feel that way today.
How has the industry changed from 2005 until now?
Well, the cleaning industry's changed dramatically. Everybody's using microfibers and HEPA filtration, and they're using, green seal chemicals that don't have VOCs. They've gotten a lot better with their methodical practices. But I'll be honest with you, there's still probably a lot of companies that are not quite there yet. And then when you compound some of the antiquated policies and procedures with the newfound issues of virus protection, cleaning is so important and cleanliness is so important just to make sure that your facility is not contributing to any problems. It's actually kind of a safe space. And that's where I think we're going is even more and more. People aren't going to be using string mops. They're going to be using microfiber towels. There's not going to be any terry cloth anywhere in a building. They're going to be using different filtration systems. They're going to be making sure that every vacuum has a HEPA filter so that airborne particulates don't go up into the air that are going to cause, asthma and such. So, the industry's changing. And, unfortunately, there's still those people out there, just like the construction industry, that are hanging on by their fingertips because they're so resistant to change, Randy. And that's what the trouble is. That's why we educate so much.
And what about the construction industry? Are you seeing an improvement there generally? Are you seeing more companies like MultiGreen emerge, or do we still got a long way to go?
We're seeing some organizations start to think about operations. It's interesting because some of these organizations have been operating for decades, and now they're thinking a little bit more about operations and efficiencies. But overall, the biggest trouble with the construction industry is the person who builds that product doesn't have to live or work in that product, so they don't care what the final result is. We have codes. We have certain standards. And, code minimum is the building's not going to fall down. The occupants aren't going to die of asphyxiation because there's no ventilation. We try to strive for better than code. And what we like is when people start thinking before the design process, they start thinking of the operational protocols and the systems and what the occupants are going to need and the occupant behavior. And I think that was one of the things that you and I in the very beginning, kind of lights started going on in both of our heads when we started discussing things, because you guys were interested in definitely building sustainable projects and making sure that the expenses, for the occupants weren't going to be astronomical so they could afford a better lifestyle and a better living. And honestly, you were one of the first developers that understood that concept, because you guys are not just looking at the short term, you're looking at the long term. And, I kind of look at it as, it's the convenience store model versus the grocery store model. The convenience store, they're going to charge a bunch. You may be their only customer that day, and you may never go back to that convenience store. You got what you needed. They got their profit. Everybody moves on. In a grocery store, it's a lot less profit because they want you to come there every week. They want you to come there every month. And by doing that, they've got a customer that's always going to be there. And, the way that you guys kind of look at your whole process is it's not necessarily making the most money on the initial construction. It's looking at the project through the years, what it's built for the occupant experience, what the amenities that the occupants can experience. And most importantly, one of the things that we haven't seen a lot of organizations yet, and we know it's coming with all of these ESG programs out there, you guys care about the impact in the community. And that's a rare thing, Randy. And that's, I think, why we work so well together.
It is a great fit. What advice would you give for a company like ours or any others that are listening to make more sustainable decisions? I mean, where would a company even start?
The interesting thing is I think a company has to start with its mission of not just making a profit for shareholders, but especially in the multifamily market, making a home for occupants, not just a rental property, not just a place to live, not just an apartment, but making a home, a place where they go and they pull into the front gate and they're proud to live there, where they can walk or bike to local amenities, where they have some of the technology that maybe that technology is usually only in the upper level of places. And when you guys start with that mission of building better and doing better, that's where it all starts. And, one of the suggestions I would always say is anytime things start going a little bit crazy, a little bit chaotic, it happens in everybody's life, especially during these times. Take a step back. Look at the mission. Is the business being guided directly because of that mission statement, or are we trying to sail away a little bit? And one of the things that's been so important in our discussions is the operational side of it. And that's one thing that I think as long as MultiGreen always keeps an eye on the mission and always looks at the operation of a facility and how the occupants live in that facility 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years after construction. That's where you need to make sure you don't stray. Because if you stray from that mission and from that operational ideology, you're going to be just like a lot of other multifamily developers that may build beautiful, beautiful accommodations, but aren't quite getting it. And then in a few years, you start selling the portfolio and going in a different direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beginning with the end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's some good feedback, and we're definitely going to incorporate that, and we have incorporated that, and we're hoping others will follow. What are some of the top problems or the easiest things that we could address right out of the chute, whether it's in construction or operational efficiencies? Are there some quick fixes that would help all of us be a little bit more sustainable?
I think the biggest thing is having a plan that gives a little bit of flexibility to the contractor, for sourcing, because certain things may not be able to be sourced in certain areas. But having that plan and making sure that plan is followed. Sometimes something will happen where maybe you have to put another entrance in, to the back of the complex, and that's going to take, another $3 million out of the budget. Now you got to go through the VE process. The key is just making sure that we stay true to the course, right? And that's, what the whole goal is. Don't start getting sidetracked. Stay true to the course and keep going. Contractors, if you tell them this is what you need to do, follow the rules, don't make any changes, they can follow the rules. They cannot make any changes. It's when they're given a lot of flexibility, and that's when sometimes the decisions they make may not be the same value or input that you would make. And then when looking at the operational side of it, long-term holds are much different than short-term holds. In a long-term hold, you want to build with resiliency, with reliable products. They're going to be there. You want to do life cycle cost analysis. So before the project is built, you know what the expenses are going to be for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, just like the military and the government does. And if you can kind of stay with those things in mind of we've got our template, we've got our specifications, we've got everything we know to build a successful project, and we're not ever going to forget about the fact that we're going to hold this project and we're going to make a commitment to our tenants when they come in that we'll be here for the next decade or two, or hey, maybe there's even a generational process where parents move out and they move up into a different facility, maybe a senior facility, and then all of a sudden their kids, as they're graduating from college, they kind of go into a similar unit just because of the convenience and the amenities in that unit.
Earlier on, you mentioned VE, which stands for value engineering. And it's so ironic that that's the word the industry uses, because typically that means you're removing amenities and you're making things pencil. VE is something that oftentimes we want to avoid at MultiGreen because, we do have those design guidelines or standards. VE, let's talk about that for a second, Dave. Is that a good thing or a bad thing when you're talking new construction?
I think the way that the industry currently looks at VE is it's value exiting the project. And if we turn that around, I think that value engineering can work. But here's a concept, right, Randy, is instead of value engineering and saying we're going to get a crappier mechanical system because we have to reduce our budget and we can't afford an 18 SEER, so we're going to go down to the code minimum of a 13 SEER. And we don't really care about the expenses of our occupants after the fact because they're paying the power bills. In my mind, value engineering is, let's solve this problem. Let's all get together and figure out how can we reduce the budget and still build a building that has value. And insulation, envelope, those things are a lot more affordable than a mechanical system. So maybe if we shore up the insulation in the envelope, maybe if we put a better roof on the building, maybe if we increase the budget 1 or 2% to get better quality, fenestration with windows and doors, by doing that, we might be able to find a smaller mechanical unit that still has a higher SEER value that's going to do the same thing for us, and it's still going to save that amount of money in the budget that we need to save. And that process, it's a little bit more timely, it's a little bit more planning, and you've got to get other trades involved. So it's not easy, but it's a lot better because instead of just saying, oh, we're going to trim the mechanical system, 20%, and here's where we're left, a project that isn't as efficient, we're going to make it efficient and we're going to do what we can. And I think that's what the integrated design process does, is it brings those professionals together so that if there is needed budget revision, whatever that might be, the team can still work together to get that done. And part of that, Randy, may be we might not do some of the flashy amenities right now, but we're going to prepare for them, put the infrastructure for them, and then we'll add them in after we get up and running because we plan for it. And it's not going to just be, deferred. It's, within 6 months of operating this facility, we're going to put these amenities in place and we've already got the infrastructure in, so it's going to be a lot cheaper. And that's the biggest problem is we always get the VE process and, we'll go for months on a project, working with the team, telling them this is what's going on, this is what we have to do, we've already achieved X, Y, and Z. And then they go through that VE process and then they send everything back to us and say, can we still achieve everything that we decided if we do this? And we're like, well, no, because you just cut everything out that we were talking about for the last 6 months. And now we've got to go back to the drawing board to get everything to the level that they needed it.
Last time I checked, there was 85 plus different frameworks that we at MultiGreen could report to and that we're eventually going to report to. But it seems like there's just a few that properties can certify to. We've specifically enlisted you and your team to help us with LEED certification or Green Globe certification. And eventually, we will be incorporating WELL certification into our properties. Can you spend a minute in just explaining the difference between all of these frameworks and what probably is most relevant for us here at MultiGreen?
Yeah, it's interesting because there are literally, like you said, probably 80 something different organizations that if you wanted to report to, from emissions to energy use, to water use, to waste use, new construction industry. And a lot of these organizations may have other benefits. Some organizations are tied to HUD financing. So if you achieve certain certifications, you can get a special financing rate with HUD. Some of these different certifications are tied to incentives in different states or rebate programs from utilities. With MultiGreen, what we're trying to position is putting together a scorecard, so to speak, a checklist that no matter what certification that we need to achieve, whether it be for HUD, whether it be for a local incentive or a utility incentive, we're trying to put a checklist that's going to cover everything. So again, when we talked about, is it going to take a little bit more planning? Yeah. Is it going to take a little bit more organization? Absolutely. But the nice thing is once we start building these projects, then we can look back at this checklist that we developed specifically for MultiGreen and say, does it hit the boxes? Does it do this? And then when we start adapting that checklist into the certifications, for HUD or for incentives, that's going to be the true test. One of our biggest goals is making sure that we're not missing anything. And, LEED and Green Globes seem to be the most overarching programs just because they cover everything. Not only do they cover energy and water, but they also cover the site. They cover the location as far as transportation amenities. They cover indoor environmental quality. So they're all encompassing. Okay. And that's why we've kind of chosen a checklist that makes sure that they can hit all of those boxes, because we know if we can hit those boxes, then some of the other certifications are easier. Now, when it comes to WELL, that's a whole different ballgame, Randy. And with WELL, it's a little bit different, because the goal of MultiGreen is to build a better project for the tenants and to build something that's going to be durable and provide a better home. And that's really where the WELL process comes in. There's not a lot of organizations that commit to WELL, because typically there's no financial incentive. The only incentive you have is healthier occupants. And a lot of people don't know how to monetize that. And that's the saddest thing. We know that the most expensive item for any organization is its people. But yet, a lot of times we make decisions to put our people in environments where they can't thrive. We know that schools are some of the worst environments out there for learning, because they don't have good ventilation. They don't have good air quality. They don't have daylighting. The kids can't survive. And those are the types of things that WELL addresses. WELL doesn't really address the energy. They address the water quality, the air quality. They address the lighting. And the cool thing about how MultiGreen and Green Vision is putting this checklist together is, as we're assembling this checklist, we're keeping all of the WELL typologies in mind. So when we talk about energy meters, you and I aren't just talking about energy meters. We're talking about energy meters that report data so that we can monitor that data. We're also talking about air monitoring. We're not talking about a CO2 sensor that goes off and says, oh yeah, you've got too much CO2, open the windows. We're talking about ongoing monitoring so that we can tell the occupants what the quality of air is at every minute that they're breathing within these facilities. And the same goes with water. And, we're looking at building these facilities so that there's more daylighting. And when we do have to use man-made light, we're going to use light with circadian rhythms so that we're not causing additional stress and anxiety, so that these people are going to be able to go to sleep at night and have a healthy sleep. So when they wake up in the morning, they're ready to start the day. And that's really what WELL is. WELL takes every one of the aspects that makes living, 1, possible, and 2, bearable, 3, enjoyable, and it puts those all together in the program. And that's one of the fun things is you're one of the first developers that ever started talking about WELL in any one of our discussions. And we have a lot of discussions, Randy. You were the first one that said, hey, we really need to start integrating this WELL process into our facilities because we care about our occupants.
And that was before COVID-19.
Mm-hmm. It was way before. That was 2 years ago that you guys committed to that. And that's what, honestly, when I heard that, it just put a big smile on my face because I'm like, Randy really gets it.
Well, it's been fun working with you, Dave. We have 2 more questions that we'd like to ask you. And we ask everyone what they think about the word association of green. Being that you are representing the green industry, Green Vision, you're going to have a lot of fun with this one. When you hear the word MultiGreen, obviously we're talking about multifamily and green multifamily, sustainable multifamily. But when you hear the word specifically green, how do you respond? Like, what are some of your favorite green things? And I'll just leave that open-ended for you.
One of the first things that comes to mind when I hear green is I think of a forest. And a forest is very interesting because as you see it on a map, as you drive down a road, as you look at it from a path, it's just a big green mass. And sometimes you're not sure what's in that forest. It can be intimidating. It can be friendly. It can be scary. It can be exuberant. It can be thrilling. But until you start walking in, you're not quite sure what's there. And then once you go in, you can actually start seeing the trees through the forest. You can start isolating one bird from another. You can start hearing the chipmunks wandering through. And one of the things that I like kind of taking that analogy and pushing it over to MultiGreen is when somebody sees these projects, they might look a little bit different. They might look fun. They might look exciting. But the biggest difference is when people start peeling away the onion and seeing how it's built and seeing what's involved. And that's really the fascinating thing about MultiGreen is you guys are going into an industry where there's a lot of competition and there's a lot of people that have been there. And once you start educating people, they're going to actually see what's in there. You know, just like a young child, they don't necessarily want to go in the woods. It can be dark and scary. But once you take them in there and they start seeing the fascination of animals running around, and they start seeing the birds, and they start seeing, you know, the trees and the different types of plants on the ground, and they hear the little trickle of the stream, it's not a scary place anymore. And that's why it's exciting to work with MultiGreen is you're going to make the multifamily industry change. And you're going to make it from the standard boxes, putting people into a habitat that may or may not be the best for them, to an industry where people want to go because they know it's a better environment. And that's what I'm excited about.
It's a great response, Dave. So it is going to be a great decade. I think that there's going to be a proliferation of green activities. We're seeing it now in the capital markets. Europe has been demanding ESG investments for a very long time. Most of our capital to date has come from Europe, from families that are IX shareholders that are demanding ESG investments. And we're really excited about it. We think it's just the tip of the iceberg of what is about to come. So it is now 2020, Dave. We have, at MultiGreen, shared this goal with the entire world, at Davos specifically, at the World Economic Forum, that we were going to improve the state of the world by constructing 40,000 new multifamily homes, and do it by 2030. That is our goal. That is our mission. So if you just had one wish for MultiGreen, Dave, what would it be?
To make sure you continue to do it. Unfortunately, I think sometimes people get so caught up in trying to make everything perfect. And what I've seen is when people are striving for perfection, sometimes they can't deliver. And I think the step-by-step approach that you guys have already been successful with in pushing to get better on every project is going to be the key to success. Your planning and everything else that you've been doing for the last year and a half is definitely going to come through. But the fact that you're already building, you're not only building, but you're reviewing everything that you're building, and you're looking at those projects in a different light after construction of what they could have been. I think that's the thing that separates everything, is you guys are not just looking at it in the short term. You're looking at it in the long term. And as long as you can continue, you know, it's just, what do they say about anything? You've got to get into the practice of doing it, and then you've got to get into the habit of reviewing it. And I think that's the key, is that you guys are doing it and you're reviewing it. So every project is going to get better and better. And that's the exciting thing, is you guys aren't taking a step back. You're going forward with every project.
I appreciate that, Dave. We're going to have you back. We love your insight. Thank you so much for being a leader in this industry. I look up to you in so many regards, especially when it comes to your vision of green. And I want to let you know our listeners appreciate it too.
Yeah, no worries, Randy. It's always a pleasure. I know 3 years ago is when we met. We were at a conference and we kind of looked at each other and we started chatting. And I think we're the only two people in the room that talked about sustainability that day. And, here we are 3 years later, and we're doing it. And we're going to continue to do it for the next decade. And the most important thing is we're going to be impacting communities, not just affecting communities.
I just got chills. It's just the beginning, Dave.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Join us as we build 40,000 attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily homes by 2030. And if you like the content you're hearing, hit the subscribe button. Follow us at Think MultiGreen and sign up to learn more at www.multi.green.